guys, and welcome back to another episode of Dark Souls 3 with me, Chris, playing solo as always. And I know I said I was gonna stop doing the voiceover things that I did before, but I actually found it to be quite a nice format for me to record these episodes with, because first of all, I'm making a hell of a lot more progress not having to talk while playing. Just saying, well, you're probably not going to see too much of a progress in this episode, but essentially, I felt like it's much better if I do the voiceovers later. You will not see my initial reactions to stuff happening, which I suppose might be a bit of a loss. But on the other hand, I will provide more in-depth commentary and less of a kind of thing while trying to dodge and also fight. So as you can see, I've actually... this is right after I killed the priest guys, I think. No, this is after I killed the Abyss Watchers. Never mind. So I'm just casually running around here, not entirely sure what I was supposed to be doing. If I recall, I think I'm heading up to visit, to the secret place. That's where I'm heading. You'll see it very soon. So I've been talking on and off again about the lore of this game, and I've not done a super great job of it. Like, there's a bunch of stuff I didn't really remember, and I've been repeating a bunch of stuff a bunch of times, like in different ways, and I've forgotten names. Basically, if you're in here to learn more about the lore of Dark Souls, I have not been a very good lore master. So to fix that, I've actually read up a little bit about it, and I've done made myself some notes. So I thought this episode, since not a lot will be happening during it, I figured we can start talking about the lore of Dark Souls 1. And I will not go too in-depth into it. I figure we can do that later in later episodes, or might actually do that when I'm playing Dark Souls 1, if I ever return to that playthrough. But let's start with me reciting the intro to Dark Souls 1. Now, you can find this online if you want, but this is, I copied it down word by word. And we're gonna look at it and discuss what it actually means. And if you don't remember, this is like the creation myth of the world that we're in. And it is from Dark Souls 1. It goes, "In the age of ancients, the world was unformed, shrouded by fog. A land of grey crags, arch trees, and everlasting dragons. But then there was fire, and with fire came disparity, heat and cold, life and death, and of course, light and dark. And then from the dark they came, and found the souls of lords within the flame. Nito, the first of the dead, the Witch of Izalith and her daughters of Chaos, Gwyn, the Lord of Sunlight and his faithful knights, and the furtive pygmy, so easily forgotten. With the strength of lords, they challenged the dragons. Gwyn's mighty bolts peeled apart their stone scales. The witches weaved great firestorms. Nito unleashed a miasma of death and disease. And Seath the Scaleless betrayed his own, and the dragons were no more. Thus began the Age of Fire, but soon the flames will fade, and only dark will remain. Even now there are only embers, and man sees not light, but only endless nights. And amongst the living are seen carriers of the accursed dark sign. Yes, indeed, the dark sign brands the undead, and in this land the undead are corralled and led to the north, where they are locked away to await the end of the world. This is your fate. Only in the ancient legends is it stated that one day an undead shall be chosen to leave the undead asylum in pilgrimage to the land of ancient lords. Lordran." So that's the story that you're told in the beginning of Dark Souls 1. And it has a couple of interesting points in it. First of all, it doesn't mention the third age, the age that you will usher in Dark Souls 1. And presumably, the age we are in right now in Dark Souls 3, which would be the Age of Dark, or the Age of Man. Like, I don't know if we're currently in the Age of Man, but I'm having a sneaking suspicion that that might be the case. Basically, there was the Age of Ancients, or you can call it the Age of Dragons, where there was really no life. There wasn't any light or dark, or life or death, or even heat and cold. It just was. You can kind of look at it how the universe was before the Big Bang. Like, there was nothing. It was just nothing. And the everlasting dragons were obviously mortal. And the arch trees are the giant pillar trees that we've seen every now and then in... I don't know if we've seen any in this game. I don't recall. But I do know that you see them in the first game, and you see them in the second game. And you also see them in Bloodborne. You see them in the Dream World. I don't know if this is a tribute to Dark Souls, or if it's, something similar to it, but I'm pretty sure they are there. So anyway, after a while, fire came to be. And they're showing us, like, deep in the earth. Fire sprung up from somewhere, and with fire there came life, and also heat and cold, life and death, light and dark, all that jazz. And in this fire there were some Lord Souls. So some of these creatures that sprung to life, or whatever you want to call it, they found these Lord Souls, and the ones who found them were Gwyn, Nito, and the Witch of Isolith, and the fourth one, the Furtive Pygmy, who is, by the way, never again mentioned in any of the games, as far as I know. Again, haven't finished Dark Souls 3, so I wouldn't know. The Furtive Pygmy, we will come back to later. And furtive, by the way, means that if I recall, furtive means that he's not very noticeable. Someone who's, hiding. Well, not kind of hiding, but, trying not to stick out. This is furtive, if I recall. Correct me if I'm wrong. And Gwyn, Nito, and the Witch of Isolith and her daughters, they killed the everlasting dragons. So they essentially took down the previous rulers of the world, or rulers if you want to call them that, and they ushered in the Age of Fire, or the Age of Gods, as you can also call it. And the Age of Gods is Gwyn's time. Like, he was in control during this time. Now, the Age of Gods, or the Age of Fire, is like you can kind of liken this to Greek mythology, and have Gwyn be Zeus, and the everlasting dragons could be the Titans who were around before Zeus, and essentially the Zeus and his fellow gods, they fucked up the Titans or the gods, and they took over. Well, not gods, sorry, dragons, and that's kind of similar to how it is in this story. Gwyn took over, and he made his own realm. Called Anorlondo, and he had his army of loyal Silver Knights. And he also gave part of his soul to Seath the Scaleless. Scaleless meaning he didn't have scales, and Seath is one of the dragons. But Seath was born without scales, and the scales were the key to immortality, meaning that Seath was not immortal. And this is very important for his character development, which is something we would talk about in a later episode, I think. But essentially, Seath helped them kill the dragons. Probably he revealed that without the scales, the dragons could be killed, so Gwyn peeled away the scales, and then everlasting trees were burned by the Witch of Isolith, and then Nito probably killed the dragons with his miasma of death and disease. Or the Silver Knights killed them, whatever. Now, the thing with fire is that unless there's stuff to burn, fire will eventually, go out. Because there's three things that fire needs, and it's oxygen, it's something to burn, and it's heat. Take one of those three away, and it will stop burning. I think anyway, if I remember my high school physics correctly, or chemistry. So, oxygen obviously exists. Heat, obviously, since there's a fire already going on. But since there is nothing to burn, the fire will eventually go out. Now, this is what happens way before the story of Dark Souls 1. The first flame is going out. And Gwyn realizes this, and he's like, holy shit, that means our time is coming to an end. And, I don't think Gwyn really cares about humans that much. Because there's humans around, presumably. I mean, a lot of characters that you meet in the game, like Havel the Rock, he's clearly a human. But presumably also a friend of Lord Gwyn. And I would like to think that the Silver Knights might be humans. I'm not sure about that. Havel the Rock, by the way, being a very awesome guy. I don't know if I mentioned him before. He has my favorite armor that I always try to wear in the game. Also, I never use magic, which is the Havel way of doing things. That aside, basically, what happens is that Gwyn tries to find a new way to kindle the flame. And so does the other lords, of course, or at least the Witch of Isolith tries to. And she tries to create a new first flame from her own lord soul. Like, she sacrifices her lord soul to make a new flame. But she fucks up, and she creates the Bed of Chaos, which is where all the demons come from. Like, she transforms into a writhing mass of life, essentially. So Gwyn goes, okay, clearly that doesn't work. I guess I just have to stoke the flames, or, kindle the flames. So he goes to the first flames, and he sacrifices himself. He burns his own soul in the first flames to prolong the Age of Fire. And before he does that, or after, this is not entirely clear, he sets in motion a plan to create a religion that's entirely based around kindling the flames. He creates this myth of the chosen undead who has to light the first flames. And that's where you come in, because you fall for this myth, this fake prophecy that you have to sacrifice yourself to light the first flames. But that only prolongs the Age of Gods, which means that the Age of Dark, the Age of Humanity, will not happen. Gwyn foresaw that the Age of Humanity would happen, and he didn't want it to happen, because he wanted the time of gods to last forever. And that's what's so great about Dark Souls 1, because you realize that by the end it's your own choice. You want to prolong the Age of Fire, the world you already know, which will, by the way, end the curse of undeath for a while, at least until the fire starts to die out again, or will you usher mankind into an Age of Darkness? Now, by the way, here's a covenant. The one I was talking about before, Rosario's Covenant. This is a PvP covenant, which is basically invading other people's worlds and taking their tongues. So that's one of the PvP covenants. As you can see, I joined it, but I didn't use the covenant icon. So we have Rosario's Fingers, but we're not going to join that because we're Sun Bros for life. But yeah, essentially that is the origin story of the first game, and also the origin story, presumably, of this game. Because you are part of the Dark Soul. And the Dark Soul is the soul of the furtive pygmy. And the Dark Soul is all of humanity. So every time you pick up a piece of humanity, which incidentally you haven't picked up at all since the very first game, there were no humanities in the second and third. There were effigies, but I don't think that's the same thing in the second game. Effigy, by the way, is like a small symbol of something else. I think, like a religious symbol of something else. But in the first game, you picked up humanity. But in this game, you're picking up something to light yourself on fire with, which is very symbolically interesting. And see, here's the little thing that I missed. This is the path down to the next area. So we're already coming to a new area. And my favorite place ever. I love this place. It's amazing. But yeah, before this episode ends, I'm just going to explain a few words, because I know a lot of people out there don't have English as your native tongue, and this game has a lot of words that might not be very familiar to you. So let's start with the word Kindle, which you might have heard if you know about the Amazon reading pad. It's like the precursor to the iPad, kind of. It's still around. You read books on it. Kindle means to light something up. It's also a small part of a fire. A kindle is like a little burning thing that you light a fire with. Arch trees are, well, they're just trees. Arch is ärke in Swedish. It's something that's old or very, it's like the initial one. Yeah, I know how you feel, Chris. I know exactly how you feel. This place is not funny at all. And then disparity, which was in the story. But then there was fire, and with fire came disparity. Disparity means that there's a difference, that there's not necessarily a conflict, kind of like a conflict between two different things. And that's the end of the episode. So I'll see you guys in the next one. Bye-bye.